Hi, hello everyone. Welcome back to my channel. Today let's talk about the famous Romantic poet Samuel Taylor Coleridge. Samuel Taylor Coleridge, 1772-1834. Born in 1772 in Ottery at St. Mary, Devon, England. Father Reverend John Coleridge, a vicar and a headmaster known for his classical scholarship. Mother Anne Bowden Coleridge, of a larger family. Samuel was the youngest of 10 children. Father's death. When Samuel Taylor Coleridge was 8 years of age, his father died suddenly, deeply affecting him and leading to a sense of isolation. Coleridge was sent to Christ's Hospital School, London, a charity school for poor but bright children, where he formed a lifelong friendship with Charles Lamb and read widely, especially Milton, Virgil, Shakespeare, etc. Often bullied, Coleridge sought a comfort in books, dreams, and a solitude, developing a rich imaginative life. Later, he was admitted to Jesus College, Cambridge in 1791 and won the Brown Gold Medal for a Greek ode, but he left without a degree, partly due to debts and a disillusionment. Coleridge became an advocate for radical political ideas inspired by French Revolution ideals, especially liberty, equality, and fraternity. Coleridge met the poet Robert Southey in 1794 and together conceived the Pantisocracy plan. Pantisocracy is an egalitarian community to be established along the Susquehanna River in Pennsylvania. The plan was never realized due to lack of funds and practical disagreements. Coleridge married Sarah Ficker, Robert Southey's sister-in-law, in 1795, more from idealism than from love. The marriage was unhappy and strained by incompatibility and Coleridge's erratic behavior. Coleridge met William Wordsworth and his sister Dorothy Wordsworth in 1797. This friendship would define Coleridge's poetic legacy. Coleridge moved near Wordsworth in another story, Somerset, and entered the most productive phase of his poetic career. Coleridge and Wordsworth's collaboration on lyrical ballads, 1798, launched the English Romantic movement. Coleridge contributed major poems like The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, The Nightingale, The Foster Mother's Tale. Now let's analyze the major literary works of Coleridge. First, poetry. The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, 1798. A moral and supernatural ballad of a cursed mariner who kills an albatross and is punished by nature. Themes in this poem include guilt, redemption, spiritual awakening, human nature, relationship. The next poem, Kubla Khan, 1816. A dream-like vision interrupted by reality. The poem is famously fragmentary. Themes include creativity, the power of imagination, the supernatural. The next poem, Christabel, 1816. An unfinished Gothic narrative about an innocence threatened by a mysterious woman named Geraldine. Themes include feminine evil, sexuality, duality of good and evil. The next poem, Frost at Midnight, 1798. a conversation poem reflecting on solitude, childhood, and a presence of the divine in nature. The next poem, Dejection and Ode, 1802. A deeply autobiographical poem exploring creative decline and emotional desolation. The next poem, To William Wordsworth. It is a tribute to his friend, acknowledging Wordsworth's poetic genius. Then the other works include Youth and Age, This Lime Tree Over My Prison, Aeolian Harp, Love. Other lyrical and philosophical explorations of life, memory, nature, and passion. Now let's go to the prose and literary criticism. First one, Biographia Literaria, 1817. A blend of autobiography, metaphysics, and literary theory discusses the distinction between imagination and fancy, introduces willing suspension of disbelief, a reader's choice to accept fantastical elements for the sake of emotional engagement. It critiques Wordsworth's theory of poetry while also praising him. The next prose work, Aids to Reflection, 1825. It explores the Christian theology and a moral philosophy. The next work, The Friend, 1809-1810, is a series of essays on politics, philosophy, and literature published as a periodical. The next work, Lay Sermons, is a political and religious pamphlets emphasizing conservative values. Now let's analyze Coleridge's philosophy and thought. He was influenced by German idealism. Coleridge read Immanuel Kant, Schelling, Fichte, and other continental philosophers. He believed in a synthesis of reason and faith, poetry and philosophy. He distinguished between primary imagination, that is the living power of human perception, and a secondary imagination, that is artistic creation transforming raw perception into poetry. He stressed the organic unity of literary works, form and content as inseparable. Now let's talk about Coleridge's opium addiction and psychological struggles. Coleridge began taking laudanum, that is opium and alcohol, for neuralgia and rheumatism. Gradually became addicted, leading to physical decline, hallucinations, dependency, and strained relationships. His addiction contributed to the fragmentary nature of many of his poems and projects. Despite several attempts to reform, including rehab-like treatment by Dr. James Gilman, he never fully overcame his dependency. Later years, Coleridge moved into the Gilman household in Highgate, London, during 1816 and 1834, where he wrote his later theological and philosophical works. He enjoyed a revival of respect in literary circles as a public intellectual and a sage figure. He delivered lectures on Shakespeare, Milton, and Romantic literature. Coleridge died on 25th July 1834, aged 61, due to heart failure compounded by opium use. He was buried at St. Michael's Church, Highgate, London. Now talking about Coleridge's literary style and innovations. Coleridge pioneered the Gothic and supernatural in Romantic poetry with a philosophical depth. He was a master of conversational verse, intimate, reflective, and a meditative tone. He introduced German philosophy to English thought. He blended imagination, theology, and politics in a way few of his contemporaries did. Coleridge's influence and legacy. Coleridge is regarded as one of the founding fathers of English Romanticism. He laid the foundation for modern literary criticism in the English-speaking world. He influenced Shelley, Keats, Emerson, T.S. Eliot, and even Sigmund Freud, Jung, in their ideas of the unconscious and the imagination. His exploration of fragmentation, self-reflection, and a poetic process anticipates modern and postmodern sensibilities. Coleridge is memorialized with a bust and a literary tribute at Westminster Abbey Poets' Corner, although he is buried in Highgate. Now let's analyze the main works of Coleridge. First of all, The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, 1798. The theme, guilt, redemption, nature's sanctity, and a spiritual awakening. A sailor's impulsive killing of an albatross brings supernatural punishment, and only through penance and reverence for all life does he find peace. The poem teaches that love for all creatures is essential for redemption. The next work is Kubla Khan, 1816. Theme include creative vision, imagination, the mysterious and the sublime. This fragmented dream poem imagines a mystical pleasure dome in Xanadu, symbolizing the immense and fleeting power of artistic creation. It reflects the ephemeral nature of inspiration and the poet's longing to preserve it. The next work is Christabel, 1816. Themes include innocence versus evil, ambiguity, the supernatural. A young woman unknowingly invites a sinister, possibly demonic woman into her room, revealing the blurry line between purity and corruption. The poem explores hidden desires and dangers beneath surface appearances. Now the next poem, that is Frost at Midnight, 1798. Themes include nature, childhood, spirituality, and a parental lover. While reflecting beside a quiet fire, the speaker contemplates the spiritual influence of nature on children. He hopes his child will grow up in harmony with the divine rhythms of natural world. Now the next poem, that is Dejection and Ode, 1802. Themes include emotional emptiness, lost imagination, longing. Coleridge mounts his lost joy and creative inspiration, acknowledging that external beauty no longer moves him. It is a raw confession of depression and creative paralysis. The next poem, The Nightingale, 1798. Themes include nature, innocence, romantic redefinition of simples. Contrary to tradition, Coleridge argues that the Nightingale song is not mournful but joyful. He uses the bird's voice to celebrate nature's vitality and emotional healing. The next work is The Aeolian Harp, 1795. The themes include music, nature, philosophy, spiritual pantheism. Using the metaphor of a harp played by the wind, Coleridge explores how passive receptivity can reveal divine harmony in the universe. He debates between religious orthodoxy and a pantheistic awe. The next work is This Lime Tree Bore My Prison, 1797. Themes include imagination, nature's interconnectedness, contentment. Temporarily immobilized, Coleridge finds consolation in imagining the natural beauty his friends are experiencing. He realizes that mindful reflection can transform limitation into spiritual richness. The next poem, To William Wordsworth, 1807. Theme include admiration, poetic kinship, inspiration. Coleridge praises Wordsworth's ability to translate personal suffering into poetic insight. The poem is both an elegy and a tribute to Wordsworth's philosophical depth. The next poem, that is Lover, 1799, themes include passion, chivalry, vulnerability. Through A Knight's Tale, the poem explores the tenderness and transformative power of romantic love. The speaker's emotional vulnerability earns him his beloved's affection. The next poem, The Pains of Sleep, 1803. Themes include guilt, psychological torment, addiction. A harrowing account of Coleridge's opium-induced nightmares and a moral anguish. The poem unveils the terror of subconscious guilt and isolation. The next work, The Destiny of Nations, 1796. Themes include prophecy, liberty, human evolution. The poem presents a mystical vision of a child destined to bring spiritual awakening to the world. It reflects Coleridge's early utopian political hopes. The next work, Recollections of Love, 1806. Themes include memory, enduring affection, romantic regret. The speaker revisits the sight of her past lover, finding that time has not diminished his emotions. The poem suggests that love's spiritual depth persists despite change and absence. The next work, Limbo, 1817. Themes include alienation, paralysis, metaphysical stasis. Coleridge describes the terrifying conditions of being trapped between life and death, motion and stillness. It is an allegory of emotion and spiritual numbness. The next work, To a Young Ass, 1794. Themes include sympathy, animal rights, liberty. Coleridge identifies with our donkey's suffering, advocating for kindness and a mutual empathy between humans and animals. It anticipates romantic, ecological, and ethical sensitivity. The next work, Sonnet to the Autumnal Moon, 1797. Themes include melancholy, beauty, solitude. The autumn moon becomes a symbol of quiet introspection and the beauty of transient emotions. The poem evokes a calm, sacred stillness. The next work, Work Without Hope, 1825. Themes include creative sterility, inner emptiness, irony. While nature thrives in spring, the speaker laments his lack of inspiration. It highlights the irony of observing life's abundance while feeling spiritually barren. The next poem, Human Life, on the Denial of Immortality, 1816. Themes include mortality, faith, existential doubt. Coleridge argues that without a belief in the soul's immortality, life loses purpose and a moral grounding. The poem is a philosophical meditation on spiritual necessity. Now the next poem, Religious Musings, 1794-1796. Themes include divine vision, apocalypse, human redemption. A visionary prophesied, calling for human unity through divine truth. It reflects Coleridge's intense political and spiritual fervor during the French Revolution era. Now the next poem, On Dense Poetry, 1800s. Themes include metaphysical admiration, intellect in poetry. In this shorter poetic reflection, Coleridge praises John Donne's fusion of emotion and intellect. It reflects Coleridge's respect for intellectual depth in verse.